You've achieved all these from that place of survival. Can you imagine what you can actually achieve when you are operating from a place of thriving?
I realized that what you are offering is something that is not at all on the market, because people often think that it's either or. It's either you go to therapy or you go to coaching, right? Now, more and more, we're seeing a bit more of a blend between these two things. But the fact that you're bringing it from a trauma-informed place, for me, makes the whole difference.
High achievers, entrepreneurs, they don't want to do years of therapy and dive into all of that. We have to meet people where they're at. Make it make sense as to how they can thrive, how they can grow, how they can scale. Now, look for the version of you that can dream. And it's there. I assure you it's there. Just give that version permission. Give that version permission to have a voice. That's what I want to do. That's why I want to bring therapy, trauma healing, inner work, and I want to combine it with aligned action.
I don't have a specific introduction, but I'll just start with this. I don't know if you remember this, but 2 years ago, March 2023, I was in Dubai. At the time, I was filming some videos for Journey. We hadn't launched yet. And I had a session with you. And you told me yesterday I had a vision. And that vision was you and I doing a podcast together. And I remember at the time when you told me, I was like, what? Like, it felt so far away for us to be able to do something like that. But it felt very encouraging to know that this was more or less a direction that we were going. And this is what I was thinking about this morning, how it's actually coming to life and it's here. And my intention for this podcast was always very simple. You've really changed my life in many, many, many different ways. And I always felt like your magic was too good to be kept for just the few clients. There are many, but the few clients compared to what you can do, the few clients that have in a way experienced it. So for me, it really was about this. And so maybe I can already just welcome you, Farya Barlas, therapist, psychologist, business growth and success coach. For me, a mentor, I guess, for also many, many people. But it's really good to have you here today.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be sitting with you and having this conversation. I don't remember telling you about that vision, but that's the thing about visions. They just come up and I sometimes express it and it's out in the world and then it becomes a reality. But I am also very grateful to be here and to be having this important conversation.
Yeah. So one place that I actually wanted to start was I think it was actually our first session. You said something extremely important to me and that stayed with me. And that sentence in itself has been a sentence that I've been carrying through my own company, through Journey. Whenever I meet therapists, you'd actually also be surprised that every time I meet a therapist, one of the first questions that I ask them is, are you in therapy yourself? Are you working on yourself? And the reason I ask this is because when we first met, you said something very important to me. You said, as a therapist, you are a therapist, so I was a therapist. You said, I wouldn't recommend people to you just yet. And I remember being, okay, that's a bit brutal, which is also part of your style, which is also what I really like. But you said, I wouldn't because you haven't done the work. And it's impossible to be in this career and to be doing this job when you haven't done the work. And that's in a way one place that I wanted us to start is that what do you mean when you say people have to do the work, therapists have to do the work, but also just people in general?
So as you know, I have supervised many therapists, psychologists, coaches, and the thing that I see over and over again is that they are very committed to one model that they have learned, at their university, college. And what happens is they try to reduce the complexity of who we are and our diverse emotions into that modality. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the idea that we pathologize others, right? And I feel that that's a very clever disguise for people in mental health, people in coaching, to hide behind that and provide advice or service to another person. That is what is actually wrong with this model of, let's say, healing. Because in today's culture, in today's day and age, somebody who hasn't experienced trauma is an exception. It's not like, I mean, I don't know how it was like before, but right now, even if if you haven't experienced some kind of trauma in your kind of setting, in your family, in your environment, you go to school, right? You go to the community around you. You would have experienced something. And by trauma, by the way, I want to kind of clarify this. It's because people get confused, and I'm yet to meet somebody who sits in front of me, regardless of what kind of trauma they've experienced, for them to actually own that and say, oh, this is a trauma. They always shy, they're always shy around there. They think, well, I mean, it's not as bad or it's not as traumatic, but it's every time you had to, I guess, systematically betray yourself and move away from who you actually are in order to be accepted, in order to be loved, in order to be safe. That to me is a traumatic experience. So then that brings us to healers, therapists, psychologists, people that are working in this field. I don't know how you can take somebody to a place, guide them to that place if you haven't been there yourself, because it can be a little bit dark and it can be scary. So we have to be mindful of why we entered this profession, and usually it's something within ourselves that needs that attention, it needs that healing. And it can be a beautiful thing if we honor that. And if we don't project it only onto the client and try to heal them and fix them.
The fixing. It's such a popular thing, right? It's such a popular reason as to why people enter this profession. You often talk about trauma, and I remember just with my work with you was never about you giving me answers. It was never about you telling me how I should go around certain situation. But what I really liked with my work with you was that you always showed me what the direction was, and you gave me the space to figure it out on my own. And as a therapist myself, I know that figuring out is exactly, me having to figure out how to solve this puzzle for myself, how to go from place A to place B, is what I learned through my experience with you, which in a way was so much more enriching than all the 10 years of studying that I did, because you facing all these fears and having to figure out a way through is exactly what I've been able to show them to my own clients, and to guide them through this. So your approach to this was very important. You always talk about trauma, and I remember when we met, you were also writing a book about trauma. What in a way really attracted you to that topic?
I think, to begin with, obviously, I trained as a psychologist, so everything was symptoms, and I, at the time when I trained, it was many, many, many years ago. So I'm sure that there has been a lot of development in that field, but I think at my time, it was kind of more about getting rid of the symptoms, and of course, that's how I started working with cognition, working with your thought process, your mindset. And I found that to be extremely helpful. But like any other healer, therapist, I would say any other person, we are constantly trying to figure out something about ourselves constantly, whether we're conscious of it or not. But for me, I went as far as I could have gone with the mindset. I went as far as I could have gone with the cognitive aspect of how we can kind of essentially override our emotions. And then I kind of started reflecting on, well, why do we have these complex emotions to begin with? Why do we have to change that emotion? And I felt that it never really stuck. If you try to change the emotion, if you try to be more positive, there is something inside of you that is committed to the other version. It's just not going to move on. You go to these self-development, seminars and listening to, these motivational talks. It fires you up. It wakes something up within you. Within a couple of hours or a few days, it's gone. Mm-hmm. Because there is something within ourselves that's staying or is committed to, let's say, pain, to struggle, to difficulties. And I wanted to know why we were stuck in that place. I wanted to kind of figure out why we are here to begin with. Mm-hmm. What are we doing? So I was drawn to the field of trauma because I kept seeing, and again, to right now as I'm speaking with you, being in this field for over 20 years, and even before that as a person, mm-hmm. not being in this field, I never met anybody who hasn't experienced some kind of trauma. In my definition, in what I understood. So I thought, well, if this is that diverse, if it's, if nearly everybody or a lot of people are struggling with this, why are we just focusing on symptoms? Why are we just focusing on getting rid of your anxiety? Your anxiety is telling you something. It's you have to navigate it. You have to listen to it. There is a message there. You want to get rid of your anger. You want to get rid of your sadness. Well, why is it there to begin with? So I dove right into the world of trauma, and I looked at many different modalities of trained in many different approaches. And as you know, my sister is also a therapist, and she's an amazing therapist. And she was the one who actually introduced me to the somatic work. And she was doing amazing work with, nervous system regulation, somatic work. And I thought, wow, why are we not trained in all of these approaches when we are dealing with trauma? Because that is a very important aspect. So, I just went right in, and it was also kind of my own personal journey because, you go through one layer and you then learn some more about yourself. And sometimes when you're looking at trauma, you realize that, hold on, I am responding to a trauma that didn't even happen to me. Mm-hmm. So that was another aspect of that I went very sort of deeply into, the idea or the concept of intergenerational and collective trauma. Because a lot of the traumas we haven't experienced ourselves, but yet we are defending against that. Our strategies, our behaviors are coming from a place of let's protect ourselves, but it hasn't happened to us. So then we have to go back and also heal those aspects of the trauma.
I'm sure that a lot of people that might be listening to this might be wondering what it actually means. I think it's a very trending topic at the moment. You see it everywhere on Instagram. People are talking about intergenerational trauma. But I want to hear it from you. What does it mean for you? What did you also discover that generational trauma was?
With the environment that we grow up in, what we observe with our parents, our community, it has a direct impact on how we view the world. When we are born or when we are small, we don't know anything about what's safe, what's not safe. We don't know anything about the world, and we learn it through the lens of our parents or our caregivers. Now, if they have gone through something, or if their parents have gone through something, and they are also operating from that place, we understand that, this is what safety means, even though we don't have that threat anymore. So a good example would be, and this is what I work with a lot of people, a lot of women at this point, around their idea of being more visible, the idea of kind of taking ownership of who you are, being authentic to who you are. That wasn't available to our ancestors. That would have been actually very dangerous for them to be visible, to have desires, that it was a lot about surviving. And we are very privileged to be in a place today where we don't have to operate from a place of survival, and yet we are.
Can you give us an example?
Well, this is what I'm kind of studying a lot now, and I'm working a lot with, as you probably know, high achievers. And I want to kind of clarify something, because people may not identify themselves with high achievers, but we all are. It's an innate need in us to grow. So what I'm observing is this universal almost understanding that in order to meet your goals, or you have to grind, you have to, you have to hustle, you have to, of course, hard work is a part of it, but there is something about the struggle. There is something about being in a place of constant, the scarcity, like that things are going to be taken away from us, health, good relationships, abundance, it's going to be, we are constantly chasing. So to me, that's a trauma adaptation strategy that we are, and we call it being ambitious. We call it, hard work. In reality, this is just another form of dissociation. We are dissociating from the parts of ourselves that did not feel safe being seen, or the parts of our ancestors or our parents that did not feel safe being visible. It didn't feel safe. I say this, visibility and safety, but if you think about it, connection. People are operating, I say people, I work with men and women, but my focus right now is more women. People are operating from a place of having fear around achieving what they want, because it's sort of deeply rooted, that fear of losing connection, being alone, And if you think about it, if you go back to your ancestors, my ancestors, you will see that people had to choose, women had to choose between connection and having the desires met, having, success, having a voice, having creating things, having more money, there's a lot of shame around that. And I say women, but that also applies to men as well. It's how they kind of operate from a place of, this is how they measure their sense of worth, and nothing else. So
I remember you, maybe it was around a year ago, and you repeated it to me a couple of weeks ago when you said, we're more afraid of succeeding than we are afraid of failing. And I remember just thinking, but how? Like, all I want is the success, all I want. And you said, and you repeated it, you said, failure is actually a bit more comfortable, and we're a bit more familiar with it than success. Because when you succeed, you become a different version of yourself. And We had a session 2 days ago when I was literally telling you about me waking up at 3 a.m. with a lot of self-doubt, a lot of fear. And you brought that up. And I tried to, I did share that with my husband. I told him, Farya did say this. And he was so perplexed, like, how is that even possible that we're so afraid of success? And that's in a way what I want to ask you.
Well, it's true. We are a lot more afraid of succeeding than failure, because having success is, everybody wants that. Some version of it. Succeeding in being a better parent, so having more money, having a better job, working for yourself, having a better relationship. Everybody wants to succeed at something. So that's the drive. That's what drives us to wake up in the morning. And the fear is, who do I have to become in order to be able to hold this new version of success? And remember, where we are right now, me and you, where we are right now is as far as our parents, our ancestors, our people in our bloodline have gone. This is as far as they've gone. So if we have to step beyond that, that's an unknown territory. And there is also an unconscious need or fear not to betray that, not to betray our kind of background, not to betray the version of ourselves that has kept us safe up until today, because we have been operating on survival. We have been operating with a version of ourselves that managed to keep us alive, safe, fed, So what's the other version that's going to take us to the next level, which is thriving, coming back to our inner magic, our inner brilliance, which is there. It's not, I'm not creating that, you're not creating that, it's already there. It's buried under our traumas, it's buried under our wounds, and it's buried under our programming. But it is there. So that's why I feel very passionate about this work, because our job is not to pathologize, not to fix anything. Our job is get the person to go back to the root of who they are and to understand that who they think they are is the survival version of themselves. Who they think they are is a trauma adaptation, kind of adopted version of themselves. It's not the version that creates. It's not the version that's going to expand. On a kind of more, I just did a talk a while back, and I was talking to business owners and entrepreneurs and high achievers, and I was saying that what gets you who you are, that gets you to the 6-figure success, is not going to be the same person that gets you to the 7-figure success. This is the language that's obviously, it's understandable more, it's more tangible, but essentially that applies to everything. Who you are to get to where you are today is not going to be the same as who you're going to be if you want to expand. But then what happens is that people push through. People want to override this identity, and it doesn't happen that way. That's why we're seeing many people who are exhausted. They're burnt out. We see people who are chasing success, trying to have better everything, and then they feel empty. And I see that a lot. They go home and they put the TV on and they dissociate. They actively dissociate. So they are actually trying to create a better life for themselves, and then they reward themselves by dissociating from that life. And I always say, when you're on your phone or when you're on watching TV or whatever, you are watching somebody else's life because you're not engaging with your own, because there's something that's not aligned. That's why you have to dissociate. Isn't that a shame that we do all this hard work just to then dissociate? It's crazy to me.
Can you define success? Because when you were talking, I was thinking about, as you know, I go to Miami quite often. And when I'm there, I'm surrounded with people who, have made it. And I can guarantee you that most of them have never set foot, in a therapy room, have never even probably, acknowledged the fact that they have any trauma for that matter. So define success, because a lot of people would say that these people are successful and they've never really had to do any of that work, to go beyond the trauma and really go into that depth. So what does success mean for you?
So I actually work with a lot of people who as you said, by most people's standard are, I don't know, within the 5% of the population of the world, because they're super successful. And successful by the definition of how it looks like. As I mentioned earlier, we're all constantly looking for success. You cannot show me a person that says, well, you know what, I don't want success. They may not want a version of a success that they think is success, but they want better things, better quality of life, better feeling inside. So success is, it's learning to operate from a version of ourselves that's not in a shadow. By that, let me just break it down. It is going back to who we actually are, because that version of ourselves, behind the trauma, behind the wounds, that version of ourselves has a mission, has a purpose. That version of ourselves is very magical and it can create things. So once we align how we operate in the world today to that version of ourselves that's coming from a place of thriving, that its success is unavoidable after that. The measurement of the way that we measure success, that's going to be the byproduct. It's not going to be. And you mentioned that a lot of people have achieved success without doing the inner work. And you're right, but I would say that they have achieved that despite of not doing this work. So I always say to them, can you imagine you've achieved all these from that place of survival? Can you imagine what you can actually achieve when you're operating from a place of thriving, how good it can get because we only go as far as we can visualize. And our vision is disrupted. Our vision is blurred by our programming and our trauma. So when we take all of that away, the things that we can visualize, the things that we can see that's possible for us, it is really limitless. And that's what I want to do. That's why I want to bring therapy, trauma healing, inner work, and I want to combine it with aligned action. And I think you know what I mean, because in the world of therapy, there's two separate places. One is therapy, healing, everything is triggering, everything is, you require to go through. And I feel like it has become a way of dissociating some more.
Sometimes.
Because, I'm not going to get into that relationship until I've healed. I'm not going to ask for that promotion because I'm still in my healing process. I'm not going to visualize success, better life because I'm healing. So I feel like it becomes, and if therapists are not careful, they are going to facilitate this co-creation of a trauma bonded life. And then on the other hand, we've got these self-developments, all these coaches, business coaches, and motivational speakers that are encouraging people to override their nervous system and push through, be motivated, wake up at 5 a.m. and, do all of this, jump into the cold water. I mean, they're all helpful, but you have to actually work with your nervous system. So these two worlds are so separated from one another. So either you're successful and dysregulated and burnt out, or you're not getting to your full potential, or you're broken and need healing. So did we just come to this world to go through trauma? Spend a lot of time healing our traumas, and that's it? Or did we come to go through wounds, difficulties, process them, work with them, and then become that creator of the vision that was impossible for us to even think about years ago? Healing is not the destination. It's the foundation for creating. It's a foundation for, put it, simply, success. It's the foundation for creating the life that we couldn't even imagine, because trauma takes away our ability to imagine.
I love what you said, and it just reminded me of my own experience with you, because I remember when I first came to see you 3 years ago, I was operating from a place where, I was having a lot of panic attacks. I was not feeling good enough in so many places. And the way that I was just operating in the world was just not what I could have done, And I remember coming to you, and the first year was really just taking me from a place where I was a bit in that negative space to bring me a bit more to that baseline. But then the real magic of our work started when I was feeling a lot better in these places, and I was healing a lot from, again, talking about my intergenerational trauma, talking about my ancestors, talking about all these different things that were taking from me and I wasn't really understanding. But the work, and this is the work that was the most meaningful for me, because when we started dealing with all these issues, I often give this image that, when you're in a movie and you see a lock, like a door is locked, and then suddenly the right key goes in and then it starts unlocking, and then you see all the locks just like moving in spaces, and then it just creates like a straight line.
Yes.
This is exactly how I feel my experience with you was, because you helped me unlock so many things. And then when that straight line happened, things just started flowing. And this is how the idea of journey, not just the idea of journey, but the courage to do journey really came forward. And then all the work that we did for those 2 other years after was just based on how to bring that potential out, and I often think as an entrepreneur and as a solo founder, how none of it, I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it wasn't for the sessions that we also had in parallel. You guiding me through the process, but never by coaching me the way that, like a business mentor would do. And I remember the session as if it was yesterday, when I was telling you I'm having a lot of anxiety. I bought all the startup books. I bought them all, and I'm starting to read them. And every time I go through one chapter and another chapter, it's just even more anxiety. And I realize how incompetent I am in this field. And I remember you told me, but who's doing the product? I said, me. I said, who is founding this? I said, me. I said, who do you want it to resemble? I also said, me. And then he said, so why are you reading these books? You should be reading books that help you enhance who you are as a person, help you become the best version of yourself. And in that moment, I realized that I will never be a businesswoman without having this side to me. And I realized that what you are offering is something that is not at all on the market, because people often think that it's either or. It's either you go to therapy or you go to coaching, right? Now, more and more, we're seeing a bit more of a blend between these two things. But the fact that you're bringing it from a trauma-informed place, for me, makes the whole difference. And I do wonder, I mean, you have met so many people that are entrepreneurs. How do they do it when they don't have this other side?
Yes, you're right that these two worlds are not connected at the moment. And when we started speaking, you're very courageous and you're open about your journey. I think that's very valuable, and that's why it makes you qualified to be doing what you're doing now, and to be kind of guiding a movement. So it's coming from something that that is within you, and you thought that it was broken. You thought that the anxiety or panic attacks are, because they're symptoms, right? And this is what people face. They want fixing. They want what we mentioned at the beginning, and it is bringing people to this understanding that you're not broken. You're just amazingly capable of surviving and protecting yourself. That's a ability. It's not something that's broken that we need to fix. It's something that we need to understand and make it work for us rather than against us. There is no dissociation on its own is not a negative thing. It helps us protect ourselves. But then when it becomes our default position, that's when we operate from that place. So a lot of people, thankfully, people are wanting more, even from therapy to, endlessly visiting your childhood. And I say sometimes aimlessly doing inner child work. It doesn't have a purpose. And this is what I've seen. It's kind of taking the person to their childhood. They can process emotions. And my question is, and then what? And I think that's why people, high achievers, entrepreneurs, they don't want to do years of therapy and dive into all of that. So we have to meet people where they're at. You can combine them. You can use even the inner child work to make it make sense as to how they can thrive, how they can grow, how they can scale now. Because otherwise it just becomes a bit of you're just indulging in something and you're keeping yourself protected and you're essentially dissociating more. So anybody that's expanding, growing, they're doing some version of their identity shifting, the programming of their identity, whether they're aware of it or not. And my work has been to invite people to this place of understanding that it doesn't have to be that hard, that you're not broken, you don't need fixing. And my work is not to heal you, it is to make you aware of all the things that are getting away or have been getting away in you achieving or reaching your fullest potential. So apply to entrepreneurship, apply to relationship, it's the same thing. But I'm focusing more on that aspect because I believe that we are happiest when we are creating. We are happiest when we're not surviving. And because of that, I think it's very important for trauma healing, inner work, somatic work, spiritual work. They all to be combined to what step am I going to take to reach my next level of expansion? If it's not linked to that, you will feel a bit stuck after a while.
Stuck and completely discouraged as well. I mean, this is what I was sharing with you yesterday, is that being an entrepreneur is having to find motivation when there is literally no reason to be motivated. You're drained. You have so many things that you have to go through. Money is not coming in. You constantly have to prove yourself in an industry that has such high standards. And I said that to you yesterday. I said, if it wasn't for, I mean, I call it your wisdom, but if it wasn't for your wisdom, if it wasn't for the way that you made me aware that this is not about me, actually, this is so much bigger than just me. This is about my ancestors coming forward, having built a pyramid for me to be able to shine in this way. This is about me connecting with my body. This is about my soul. I wouldn't be able to do that. There are mornings where I wake up, I don't want to work. I'm completely depleted. And if it wasn't, again, for these visions that you've given me, these acknowledgement of who I am outside of this shell that is called a body, it would be very difficult to do so. And I do observe around me and I go, it must be so hard for so many entrepreneurs, for so many people that are, like you were saying, hustling and really, grinding, trying to make it, when you don't have this knowledge, this understanding, this embodied experience that we are so much more than just this thing that we're trying to get done. And you always talk about creating. And even in moments of complete self-doubt, like the one I was telling you about on Friday, you made me realize that those emotions, even if they feel uncomfortable and scary, they are part of the growth. This is me realizing that I'm stepping to another, a higher layer that I've never been to before. Hence why the self-doubt, hence why the fear. And your ability to do this can only bring people up, and give them even more tools to be able to create from that space. So you keep on talking about, not that you keep on talking, you talk about the work that you're doing.
I keep on talking about, you're right.
You talk about the work that you're doing. What is the work that you're doing now with these high achievers?
I say high achievers. I think, again, we are all high achievers. So the work is to, how I feel about our inner brilliance, about our inner magic, right? And that, as I keep mentioning, trauma makes that blurry. Trauma makes that aspects of ourselves difficult to access. So I have gone through this whole process, this whole journey of working with symptoms and then getting into healing and then thinking about the bigger picture and then going into trauma. Why are we experiencing trauma? What are we supposed to take away from it? What's the purpose of it? And then observing more and more that one of the trauma responses that are unnoticed, I think the most, is hard work and high achieving, I guess. And it's so celebrated. And when you're not operating from that place, let's say if somebody don't identify themselves as a high achiever, they think, oh, I'm depressed or I'm anxious, they can actually, it's recognized for them. In a way, they can identify it a little bit easier. Whereas I think with high achievers, I think with entrepreneurs and, people who want to succeed or professionals, it goes unnoticed a lot. And they get stuck in that place of repeating their trauma bonded pattern. I always say this, you're trauma bonding with your business. You're trauma bonding with your work. It's not just about the relationship we have with our significant other, that can be a form of trauma bonding. It's your work as well. So now my focus is to teach people and work with people to bring about that part of themselves that holds their brilliance, that holds their magic, it holds their desire, I guess. But that's the very part that had to be or has been in the shadow, or it's the part that they have to hide behind in order to survive. And I want to kind of bring that out and show them that you don't need to survive anymore, that you can create safety. And from that safe and aligned place, you can expand so much easier, and you can go so much further with your success.
It reminds me of the sentence that you said in our journey workshop when you said, we often present the most digestible form of us, the one that will be mainly accepted by others. So what I hear from you is that you're helping people challenge that.
We're only presenting our most digestible version of our trauma. So then what happens to the rest? So then are we performing or are we embodying? Are we embodying, have we managed to embody that person who is open to receive more of everything, whatever you desire? Or are we performing to be worthy of achieving or chasing whatever it is that we are trying to chase? And I'll go with the first one.
Who would benefit from working with you? Because obviously some, like you mentioned before, a lot of people want success. So it is quite innate in us. But also a lot of people are not willing to do the work. And if I know something about you, especially from the way that you start most of your sessions with your one-on-one work, is that if you're not here to do the work, you can go and find someone else, another therapist that might just be a bit more, around the validating stance and all of that. Because I know, and I said that to anyone that I have recommended to you, is that just only see Farya if you really are willing to do the work. So what does that look like? If someone is considering working with you, what should they be ready for or willing to do?
And that's a very good question. And I think, and it's a very important one, because you're right. If you are in a place where you want to still entertain your symptoms, if you want to entertain your trauma, and this is coming from a trauma healer. I've dedicated all of my adult life to trauma healing. But if you want to just stay there and entertain your trauma and your symptoms, and then that this work is not for you. This work is only for people who you don't have to have done any inner work in the past, or you don't have to be, a high achiever that wants to only get to the 7-figure, although those are very welcome and I work with a lot of them. But it's anybody that is willing to expand beyond the version of themselves that is operating today. And it's for anybody who, can hear it, kind of a voice in the background or within themselves that, what, I want more. Like, I want to, this is not enough. This is not making me happy. I can do more. I have bigger potential. I hear that a lot, my full potential.
Yeah.
But to get to your full potential, we can't just sit down and dive into your childhood for the rest of our lives. That's just not going to get you where you want to be. So we have to integrate. We have to bring in all this work with action that is respectful of your nervous system. So we expand your nervous system's capacity to achieve more, to receive more. And then we take aligned actions. So if you're just wanting to talk about your pain and for me to listen, this is definitely not the work for you. And if you're not willing to challenge yourself and let yourself, let that version of you that's just a crazy dreamer, if you're not willing for that part of you to sit at the driver's seat, then this is probably not the work for you.
I remember when you said that, the way that I described it to you when I first met you, I said, I am fire. I told you I am fire, and that fire has been dimmed, and I needed to come back. And I know that it can do so much. And I often say that, my work with you was so good because I was willing to take action. And I mean, you would have to be the judge of this, but I really think I did take a lot of action. But it's transformational work. It really, really is. And you being able to offer this integrated form of this for the public, I think it really is revolutionary. Because as you mentioned before, so many people do either or and don't necessarily know how to integrate it. So for you to do that, and that journey workshop that we had as well, where you came from you were teaching our therapists and our coaches how to present themselves in a way that generally feels aligned with who they are. And so many of the things that you said in that workshop resonated with them on how good we are sometimes at making ourselves small. And one thing that you have taught me is to take more space and to be okay with that, to be okay with the fact that it's going to feel uncomfortable, but this is part of my own alignment. And if you're able to do this with other people, I think it really is a gift for you.
Thank you. Yes. And I also think that is my mission. So it's not, so expanding that and making it more accessible has become something that I've been working with a lot. As you know, the one-to-one work, I do that, but I only have a certain capacity for that work.
Of course.
So, and that's how the programs and, group programs and focused programs on what I call aligned success, and I call it a success alignment method, which is all of these. It's more accessible. And I also feel that there is something about being in an energy and a company of others who want to entertain their expansion. There's something contagious almost about expansion and wanting to grow. And I feel that creating those kind of containers, creating these programs where, I say program, but it's more of a container where things are taught, but they're also lived through. It's an experiential container. So that's where my work is heading more and more.
I wanted to ask you something. I'm deviating a little bit, but you mentioned this right at the beginning, and I thought it's too good to pass. But you said that you've dedicated your life to, obviously, to trauma. But the bigger question was, what's the point? What's the point of our existence? Why are we here? And I wonder if you've been able to come up with an answer.
The answer keeps changing, and I think that's also a reflection of my own growth and my own expansion. What I would have thought was our purpose 10 years ago is very different to today, and I'm sure it will be different in 10 years' time. 10 years ago, it would have been about coming back to our healthy version, coming back to our, wisdom. But then now it's about creating. Now it's about, okay, all right. We've done the trauma healing work, or we have to integrate that to the aligned action work. But what is the point? What are we here to do? Are we creating things? Are we, why did we go through all our traumas? What was well, I guess what was the point? What did we take away from that? How are we going to use that in order to get closer to our mission? I feel like we are constantly being guided. You know, we have our own kind of internal, let's call it inner wisdom, intuition, but we are constantly being guided. Yes, trauma makes you override that intuition, that inner knowing. But if you take that away, then I can't tell you what your mission is, but I do know that you already know it. I can help you uncover it. I could help you reach it. But if you think about it, it's not, you know, I only facilitate that connection. It's already there. And the reason why this work works is because I tell people something that they already know and they've forgotten. It's about reuniting them to the person that they abandoned and they forgot and they left behind, kind of bringing that forward. And that's why it works, because they already recognize it. They identify with it. They know it's the truth. So I don't know what the point is yet fully, but I do know it's a big part of it is coming back to who we are so that we can live from that place, from that aligned and guided place. And from that place, I think creating is unavoidable. You know, we have to create. You're not going to stay in that place and just get by, or you're not going to stay in that place and survive, which is what I'm seeing more and more today, which is very devastating.
I remember when I started reading Joe Dispenza and I was doing his meditation, and I came to you and I'm like, Farya, I'm not sure I'm doing it well. I feel like I have to do it in this way. And you literally said that. You said, stop giving him the power. He doesn't have the power to unleash this inside of you. You have it. He's just giving you a tool to try and access that, but you're the one that has all the answers, and you are the source of all these things. So just this over-identification that we sometimes do with, which I know I'm very good at, unfortunately, that we do, and we give that power to other people. It really is a question of reclaiming that. And that, in a way, has really been a big part of my work with you.
Actually, you did that at the beginning of this conversation as well, you know, by giving me, I mean, I'll take it because I love the compliments and it's very generous, but you did give me that, I mean, I acknowledge that it was a co-created work, but my work was to get you back to your own magic, really. I didn't create that magic, I could assure you. But so it's kind of knowing that and staying true and committed to that.
Thank you. I just maybe want to finish with this question, because I hear this a lot as a therapist, and I'm sure that you have as well. But a lot of people don't know what their purpose is, and I understand that our job is to help them find that magic that already resides in. But we sometimes meet these people that really, there's not a lot of, you know, there's not one specific interest. They don't really understand what their mission on earth really is. And a lot of the time, unfortunately, people think that your mission has to be reflected in your job, in your profession. But what do you say to those that do have a very difficult time finding that, you know, that why, as to why I'm here? What am I supposed to do here?
I think that your work is a part of your mission, because if you think about it, there was a reason as to why you were drawn to any kind of work that you're doing, even if it came from a place of necessity, even if it came from, so if it came from that place of necessity, it meant that maybe you wanted, you know, I'm only doing this job because of the money it pays me, for example. So then the abundance is important. That's where, you know, that's what you're wanting. So it's not just about, okay, I am in my mission and I can't even claim that. And because that, as you know, that keeps changing. It has the same root, but the way that I do it changes. So it's not, I kind of want to clarify that when we talk about our work, it's not that our work has to represent exactly what we want to do in the world, but it can tell us what it is that we are desiring. I think when we tap into our own desire, which, by the way, it sounds like a easy thing that, oh, I know what I want. People don't give themselves permission to even have desires, to even, I asked in that workshop what would happen if you were to charge this amount, and then what would happen if you were to triple that. People became dysregulated. They couldn't even visualize. Their bodies did not feel safe enough to even visualize what version of success or abundance that they could, that they desire. So getting back to that place of desire is a very important part, because even if you're doing a job and you don't like your job, and I hear that a lot, and you're doing very well, you're not operating from your zone of genius. You're operating from a place that is good. You're good at that.
Yeah.
You can use that to understand what your actual desire is. What is it that's missing? So if it's the money is hardly the reason. It's what money brings for you.
Mm.
So then tapping into that desire, what is it that you're wanting from as a result of that? So, kind of being open, don't think of having one mission, and that's what you have to come and understand that. Look for the version of you that can dream, and it's there. I assure you it's there. Just give that version permission. Give that version permission to have a voice.
I think it's a great way to end this podcast. Thank you so much for this. Thank you for doing the work on yourself, so you can show us and tell us, how it's done, and how a lot of the magic, where all the magic resides. So I'm just very grateful for you and for your work. And thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
I'm grateful for you and your work as well, and your commitment to your own growth, which would only result in you facilitating that growth in others. I think that's very valuable.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right.